The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Becky Magdaleno. I'm the Executive Director of AIA Florida, and this is a joint webinar with AIA Palm Beach and AIA Treasure Coast. We're so happy to have our friends from Digital Drafting Systems here with us today. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping announcements. You do not need to let us know that you are here if you are logged in through your computer. We do already see who is logged in. If you are just calling in, however, please email director@aiapalmbeach.org if you are not on your computer. If you are on your computer, we can see when you log in and see when you log out, and we'll report your credit accordingly. And we already have your AIA number, so no need to put anything into chat. You can put questions in, and we will take questions at the end. That is all I have today. Again, thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Alan.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Alan, and I'm going to be here basically to facilitate today with our presenter, James Cuervo, our Senior AEC Technical Specialist here at DDS CAD. So just a couple of little housekeeping items on my end as well. As was mentioned, go ahead and send questions throughout the webinar as they come up, as they come to mind. But we will be actually answering those questions at the very end. Okay, so we do see your questions, we see them coming in, but we'll answer them at the end. Additionally, if time is running long at the end and you're worried that your questions won't get answered, something like that, we will always be able to answer your questions over email afterwards if time does not permit. Okay, but for now, what I'm going to do is turn it over to James Cuervo for what's new in Revit 2023.
Thank you very much, Alan. Hi, everybody. I am James Cuervo, Senior Technical Advisor here at Digital Drafting Systems. Today, we will be looking at some improvements for 2023 Revit. Now, as you can see in this very large list here, which is not even really all of it, it's most of it. In the design productivity section, there's quite a bit of improvements. We also have some improvements in simulation and analysis, cloud and data, interoperability, and design optimization. Further, we also have some documentation efficiency improvements, which is also quite a bit of improvements here, as you can see. Now, because of time constraints, we will be dealing with architectural improvements in Revit 2023 specifically. And we won't be dealing with all of them, just a selected group, because there is just way too many improvements. So, beginning with, we have navigation and ID improvements in Revit 2023. Starting off with the project browser icon improvement. Okay, what we have now is a set of little icons on the left side of your view name within your browser that will allow you to understand whether the particular view has been placed on a sheet or not. The different colors would be a solid blue being the part of the sheets, a gray not being part of the sheets, and you'll also see some that are half and half. That one's mostly for schedules, and we're going to actually show you how all of that works. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Let's go ahead and open up a project here. And we'll see in this project here that there are some sheets already placed, rather some views placed already on the sheets. Okay, and those are indicated with these blue boxes right here. Okay, the gray ones, as you can see right here, are not placed. Okay, now if you were to delete one, okay, it will automatically then turn from blue to gray if that particular view has been placed in a sheet. I'm going to use this particular schedule right here because it's reflected in this point, and I'm going to also use this to illustrate the half and halves, okay? And there is something that you need to be aware of, which I will also point out, okay? So let's go ahead and see what happens if I take a view and delete it. As you can see, the how do I schedule, which is right here, turned from blue to gray, okay? Now let's go ahead to the schedule and see how we can actually make it look partial within here. What we do is in the schedule itself, we know we have this little button up here that says split in place. It will allow us to go ahead and place the schedule on specific sheets, whether we can do it evenly or custom. It doesn't matter. This is actually part of, I think it's 2022 or 21 launch for improvements on Revit. So now that I've got those selected, I'm going to say split in place. Now, what happens is you'll notice what happened immediately here. Half of it is placed because it's already placed on the sheet A102 plans, which I had selected in that list. Now I'm going to go ahead and place it here, and you'll see that that little button here went from blue and gray to completely blue. If I open up this plus sign that appeared once I asked this particular schedule to be split, you'll see that it now has two children here, children views of the main view, which is the full schedule. Now, what happens if I open up the plan A102, which is the one that has the other part of the schedule, and you can see that it's right there. Now, what happens if I delete one of these? I have to delete it. You'll notice that it goes back to half and half. So this is the half and half that that was kind of mentioned in the slide that we were looking at. Okay, and I've only seen this really in schedules. I haven't seen them in full views. Now, let's go ahead and see what happens if I go ahead and delete the other view, this one right here. You would think that this whole thing would disappear, but it doesn't. What happens if I go ahead and place the full schedule back in? Would that disappear? Okay, and the answer really is short and sweet, no. In order to actually make this back to what it was supposed to be, because it's all placed in one, you actually have to come in here and delete at least one of these child views in order to get it back to a single piece. So with that, we've seen most of it. The last part that we haven't seen is basically this. You know that you can actually turn these little icons on and off by right-clicking in this section, and you'll see a new heading right here called Show View Placement on Sheet Status. You can turn it off, or you can turn it back on. And with that, we have seen the improvements in the icon views on sheets. Moving forward, we have swap views on sheets. Now, there's a couple of things that I want you to realize. First of all, before, when we wanted to swap a view when it was already placed on a sheet, you had to delete the view and reinsert the view into whatever sheet you wanted, or delete the view and insert the proper view that you meant to put in there. That is no longer the case. You also have some additional tools within the particular dialogues that we're going to be looking at that will allow you to do some searches. It will allow you to see which views have been placed or not and where. And it will also tell you whether the sheet or the view, rather, that you're trying to swap has already been placed. Let's see how that's done. Let's go ahead and close this. And let's go ahead and open up the next example, which is this one right here. It's basically the same, but I like to keep it separate. And in this one, what we have here, we're going to take a look at this one specifically. This is the rendering, okay? And how do I know it's the rendering? Well, if I come up here to this dialog box, this particular panel is actually new in Revit 2023. It will allow you to do a few things. So let's see what it allows us to do. If I select the view specifically, it actually tells me what view and it is, and also what discipline it's actually going to. This is the rendering disciplines. You will also notice there's a few numbers in brackets at the end. So you have the discipline, the name of the view, and some numbers. The numbers are indicating the sheet it's placed on and what particular view number that is. Okay, what happens if I open this up? Well, if I open this up, you'll notice that there's a lot of them already placed here. And the ones that are not placed are the ones without the little brackets and numbers. You see them here? So if I wanted to actually change this particular one, okay, I can actually come over here and change it for the approach here. Automatically changes it. So I don't have to delete and replace. Okay, if I wanted to bring it back, all I have to do is come back. But accidentally, I'm going to select one that's already placed and see what happens. Boom. You get this little dialog box that is telling you that this particular view that you're trying to replace in this particular sheet has already been placed in another sheet. So it won't let you do that. So remember, in order to swap the views, they need to be more than anything not placed. But I'm looking for the renderings, and I find it problematic as maybe this list is too long and I can't find it. So I'm going to use the search engine right here, and I just type RE, and look what happens. RE, it's automatically showing me the renderings, all of the actual headings that have RE in it. And in this case, RE is for renderings. And I see that the approach is not placed, so I select it and automatically replaces it. Okay. Now, the other thing here is that you can switch the viewport from viewport center to viewport or to view origin. I haven't really seen too much of a difference between the two. And so I'm actually not quite understanding, but please be aware that we will, as soon as I understand a little bit more about how these two particular ones work, we will be placing a more in-depth view of this particular thing in our blog at ddscad.com. Moving forward, we also have some view filter enhancements with the addition of four additional rules: the top constraint for walls and top offset for walls, and base constraint and base offset for walls. We also have a new category, which is called wall sweeps. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Go ahead and close this out. Open up our next view. And here, we've already invoked a filter, which is this yellow section right here for the walls. So let's see what this actually is how does it work, and how does it actually get to be applied. Let's go ahead and go to visibility graphics, where the filters are for the view. And in visibility graphics, we'll also go ahead to the filters tab, and we'll see that we already have one implemented. It's called wall-based constraints. Okay, wall-based constraints are yellow. Now let's take a look and see how these two pieces work here. Okay, if I go ahead and say visibility, you will say that it actually disappears, that wall disappears, but the wall disappears for only one reason. The wall disappears because it's got a filter applied to it, and it's right here. Now, if I actually turn the filter off, the visibility graphics is not going to hide the wall itself. It's going to hide the color, as you can see. In order to get it to work again, all I have to do is apply my view, make sure that it's visible, and there it is. Now that we see how that kind of works, let's see how we can actually get it done. Let's go ahead and say edit new. So the first thing would be to create your filter. Let's go ahead and say this is a new filter. We're going to call this one brick walls, 4th floor. Okay. And we'll say okay to that. Once this has been created, we need to apply the category to the filter. The category in this particular case is going to be walls. Now, as you can see, we have walls plus a plus sign, and I wanted you to see where the wall sweeps are. It's right there. We're going to actually create one a little later on and see some things that happen there. Let's go ahead and select walls. Automatically, my rules start to add pieces to this. In other words, it's telling me, okay, it's going to be walls. What is it that you want to do with the walls? Okay, well, let's go ahead and say that we want to have a, let's start with a top constraint right here. And we'll say that the top constraint is going to be equal to the level roof. We're going to add yet another rule, which is now a bottom constraint, or base constraint, excuse me. And that's also going to be equal to level 4. Let's go ahead and say that, okay, let's go ahead level 4. I want you to see something that actually makes it much more specific. But at first, I want you to see the generality of it. Let's go ahead and say apply this and say okay. Now, we created the filter, but we haven't added the filter. So let's go ahead and add the filter, which is going to be brick walls, 4th floor, and say okay. And let's go ahead and define what the filter does. It's going to be a solid, and let's give it a nice color. Let's give this nice cyan color right here and say okay all the way out and apply. and look what happens. But I'm going to move this. I want you to see exactly what's happening. You see that? It's all of the walls that are base constraint fourth floor, top constraints roof. Okay, I can make it much more specific, and I'm actually going to force these to be deselected by, if I select here and say, and select this one, okay, edit view, make sure that I select it again, make sure that you have it selected here, because if not, it could actually go to another one. So make sure it's blue. Let's go ahead and add yet another rule, and we're going to say that this is going to be type name, and it's going to be equal to, I happen to know what the wall I need to, is there. Let's call this class wall 1425, and let's say apply to that. And then let's say here, okay, I have noticed, and this is one of the caveats that I wanted to show you. You notice how it actually didn't actually update, okay? What sometimes you need to do is maybe turn it on and off. Oops, let's go ahead and say apply. Okay, let's turn it back on and apply, and there it is. Sometimes you have to do that, so please be aware, just because you went ahead and changed it doesn't mean that it's going to automatically go ahead and implement it. You have to turn it on and off. I found that to be a little bit of a problematic, but I'm sure that it will be a solution coming for this particular little thing soon. Now, we've seen how that works. Let's go ahead and see how we can actually now apply a filter to our wall sweeps. Once again, we need to create it. We'll go ahead and say add now. And we'll say that it's going to be wall sweeps. We'll go and say ahead and say okay. Make sure that it's selected and come back down here, and we'll call this wall sweeps. Okay. Now you'll notice that the wall sweeps are being called. I'm going to say that it's going to be a type name. And I'm going to come over here and say that it's going to be equals to. I have two wall sweeps already in my project. One is the cornice, and then it's a wall sill. I'm going to select the wall sill, and I'm going to say apply that and okay. Once again, remember, this is just the creation of the filter. It's not the application of the filter. In order to apply the filter, I need to, once again, add it, select the one I want, say okay, and then define what the filter does. In this case, I'm giving it a solid color of red, so it jumps out at us, and say okay all the way out and apply, and there it is. As you can see, we have our sill here that is in red, okay? Very well. Moving forward, we also have conditional formatting for families and types inside the schedules. Now, this one I found to be very, very exciting, because some of these schedules, as we all know, can be very, very large. And to sort out through that, it's a bit problematic and time consuming. So with this particular set of formatting, conditional formatting, we can actually work quite quickly with this. Let's see how that works. Let's go ahead and close this one. Save changes no. And open up our conditional formatting exercise, which is right here. Now, we've already previously applied one, so we can see more or less how that's actually done, and it's actually applying it to the double glass doors right here. Okay, this formatting is actually applied through the formatting tab of our schedules. Okay, so we open up our schedule properties to redefine them. If we come over here to family and type, and we'll find this particular conditional formatting button available now. If we open it up, you can see that it is a family and type that equals double door glass, giving it a color of orange. Okay, so that's how basically that's defined. Let's go ahead and define a new one, and let's see some of the things that you need to be aware of. For example, let's go ahead and say a frame material. If we look at the schedule here, you can see that there's multiple frame materials here. Okay, and some of them actually fit to these particular doors, and some of them not. But let's first take a look and see the aluminum items. So let's go ahead and frame material conditional format. Let's say frame material, yes, it's going to be equal to, and now I'm going to write it slightly different because I need you to see that there is something very important. Uppercase and lowercase counts. I spelled it exactly the way it is, but I've changed the A. I'm going to say that this is going to be, I happen to like cyan. We'll use cyan again. And we'll say okay and okay. And look what happened. Nothing. The reason for that is very simply that this should be an uppercase A. Very, very finicky about that. You see that? Gotta be really, really careful how you write this down. Spelling and uppercases count. Now let's go ahead and make this a little bit more complex. Let's say that I want to see all double door glasses that have aluminum frames. Okay, so let's go ahead and frame. Let's go back to the frame material, conditional formatting, and add a second layer to the conditional format, which is going to be family and type, which is going to equal to double glass. You'll notice that all of the doors that are there, because of their families and type, are actually selected, this being a door schedule. Okay, and let's go ahead and say okay to that, and okay, and voila, there you go. Only one of these items is actually assigned to the double door glass. So there's only one door, double glass, that has aluminum frames. It's a very, very effective way for you to be able to sort out a lot of your schedules in a way that you can read them quickly without having to really go too much into depth and reading everything that's in there. Moving forward, we also have some documentation improvements. One of them being tags and displacement elements in 3D view. Now, let's go ahead and see this one, because this one also has a little caveat that I'd actually like to point out for you. Let's go ahead and close this out. Let's go ahead and open. And this is Displacement 3D. Now, in here, we've already displaced some objects, and we've already tagged some objects. We're going to see how these are tagged and how these are displaced. But more importantly, I think at this point, because we've seen displacement before. Okay, basically it's just grabbing your item, applying a displacement modifier here. It changes the icon here, and just you're able to move it. I want you to see what happened though to the objects. You see what here in the properties, what's happening? What happened to the rest of the properties? I'm going to reset it so you see what I'm talking about. You see this? See how the properties are shown, but once you displace it, the properties are not shown. That happens to be a little bit problematic, but we'll show you how to actually go around that. Now that I've got it displaced, let's go ahead and make sure that it pats itself back to where its location was, so we know where it's coming from. Okay, and let's go ahead and cancel it. Let's go ahead now into the annotate and go ahead and tag this one. Okay, I love this alignment thing. It's really super cool. Okay, there we go. Now let's go ahead and try to tag these right here, these little babies. Okay, yes, it allows me to tag it. That's very nice. And allows me to place it. That's very nice, but it's got nothing on it. Okay, great. How can we change it? Okay, can we come in here and look at this? You remember I pointed out the thing that is actually when you displace it, you're showing the properties of the displacement rather than the actual properties of the object, making it impossible for you to actually go ahead and tag that because it's not, it hasn't have a type mark assigned to it. Okay, so in order to be able to actually do it properly, I would actually do it this way. I would go ahead and reset it. Don't deselect it. Go to the edit types, come over here to type marks, put in your type. This is going to be recess light 101, right? And apply and okay. So there's my recess light 101. Let's go ahead and move this up a little bit. I like things a little bit more organized, so this is much better. Okay, and unfortunately I displaced them, but I can come over here and use the select all instances visible in view. Oops, sorry, I was on the wrong one. Let's go ahead and do it again. Select all instances. Where's my selector? Select all instances visible in view. Now I go ahead and add my displacement, and then I go ahead and place it to wherever it is that I want. You see? And now, remember, if you're going to actually go ahead and displace anything, it's better to actually make sure that you have your type marks already assigned to it before you do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to undo and have to come back and redo all of that. Granted, it's not a lot of steps as it is originally, but still, it's a good thing to be aware of. Moving forward, we have measuring in 3D, okay? Measuring in 3D. Now, notice that I'm actually saying measuring on 3D. I'm not talking about dimensioning on 3D. And now I'm going to show you the differences between the two. Let's go ahead and move over and let's close this. Save changes no here. Okay, measure 3D. Let's go ahead and open that. And we have a nice little design. I think that the shadow is getting a little bit in the way. Let's take the shadow off. Let's go ahead and take a look at this a little bit more on this type of angle right here. So you have a full 3D aspect. Let me show you first why it's not about dimensioning. It's about measuring. Let's go ahead and see what a dimension would look like in 3D. Okay. I'm going to grab this point here, and I'm going to, it doesn't allow me to, I don't know where I am. So if I want something, some height here, I can't get a height, because if I come over here, you would think, or actually even the top, you notice that it doesn't even let you select something that is not parallel to the actual object that you're starting from. You notice that? For example, this surface here versus this one. This one's parallel to that one. Not on the same level, but they're parallel. How do I know? Well, here it is. If I actually come over here to the top view, you'll notice that it's actually dimensioning horizontal to it. It's on the same plane, it's on the same level. So dimensioning doesn't work on that. Even to this particular extreme, I'm going to actually dimension this corner to this corner. If I come up over to the top view again, oops, sorry. See that? It looks more like an aligned view rather than what I'm looking for. So let's remember, dimensioning is not what we're looking for in here. We're actually looking for measure. So now let's see how it actually should work. If we come over here to modify, we have our measure tool right there. And I really want to know what the top of this point here or the bottom of this point here is to the floor. What's that height? So all I have to do is I go to measure rather than dimension. I do this one. I type SP for snap perpendicular. It selects the proper, tells me the proper height right there. See it? If I want to do it on the same plane, I can still do that. See it right there? So please remember, in order to actually get this dimensioning to work in the proper ways that you would want it to, for example, like measuring what the height is going to be from this point here to this point here, SP, that's how you do it. Dimensioning does not allow you to do that. Very well, let's move forward. Now that we've seen a measure in 3D, we have another displacement, displacing elements in 2D views, which helps you clarify some sections as far as I'm concerned. And so let's go ahead and see how that's actually working. Let's move back over here and close this one. Let's go ahead and open our next exercise. Okay. And now we're going to displace these items. You'll notice that there is a storefront coming back at me here, but it's not quite clear. You see it? So what I can actually do is I can actually grab this item, okay, and I can then displace it. I can displace it via visually, or I can displace it numerically. If I'm going to go into the positive direction rather, let's rephrase that. If I'm going to go into the direction that this green line is pointing, that would be the positive values. If I'm going in the opposite direction, that would be negative values. So if I want this to displace this way, I need to put negative, and I'm going to put negative 18 here. Okay. and apply. There it is. Now, in order to save some time, you can actually display several in 2D also in this fashion. And since we know what the displacement value is, I can just hit displace, come back over here, and give it the proper value. And it displaces it for me exactly where I want to. Now, for further clarification, we can always select our items and path it back. This way, so it's a little more clear. Oops, a little extra one. There we go, but we can actually come back and erase the other one. I'm actually one that if I make a mistake, I just make a point that I make a mistake, especially if I'm doing a sequential item like this, and I come back and correct it after I'm done with this. Otherwise, I have to restart some of this stuff, and it's a little time consuming. So, because I can do it this way also. Here it is. Escape. Whoops. So escape. I come back over here. Where's my third one? There it is. And I can select and then we can always delete it. Okay, well, now that we've got it all pathing back to its original spots, one more thing, combining it with the 2022's multi tagging, let's go ahead and see how that would work. It's really cool. We come back up over here to the annotate, we go to the categories, and we say that we're going to, let's go tag the middle one here. So I'm tagging this one. Okay, and I'm just placing it. Then I can then hit the escape key, go to modify and select it again, and then add or remove hosts. And I'm adding this host here, this one, and this one. Once I have that done, in order for clarity, I can always adjust my leaders. And allow them to also adjust properly this way. And we have a very nicely, much more clearly laid out view with the displays in 2D and combining with multi-tagging with objects. Moving forward, we have drafting improvements, such as we no longer have to go to that work plane dialog box in order to say pick. Yes, granted, you can use the PK shortcut, but it's a lot easier to just go ahead and select an item, because either way you have to come back over here. So let's go ahead and see how this works. Let's go ahead and close this here and open up our next exercise. And in this one, what we were going to do, okay, this is an interesting item. Okay, there we go. We see that the colors may be getting in the way, so let's go ahead and switch it from realistic to hidden view. I'm also going to remove the shadows because they also get in the way. And what I'm going to do is really quickly create a pergola component here, okay, within seconds. Really, really easy. It's really a cool thing. When I started to see this, I said, wow, this is really nice. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's come over here to the components and model in place. Let's go ahead and call this a generic item. And let's call this one Pergola 2. And the reason why I'm calling it Pergola 2 is because I have a completed one that I want to show you, so you can see what you can actually do with this in this fashion. Okay, and rather than having to go to set and then pick here, I'm going to go and pick, and I'm going to say, that's my surface. I can now go ahead into my right view, get a little closer, select extrusion, box. Doesn't matter what the size of the box is at this point, because I can come over here and always edit it. And so this is going to be, let's call this 2 inches. And let's say that, oops, a little bit too much. Let's go ahead and select that one, and we'll say that this is 1.5. Very nice. Let's go ahead and move it in place. And let's go ahead and array it to this point with 15 items. Okay, so let's go ahead and say finish here. Notice that I finished the design of this piece, not the whole generic model that I'm creating. Okay, so that's actually just for that particular extrusion. So notice also that the array is now on, so I can say, okay, I'm going to take this item and going to array it from this point to this point, okay? And I'm going to give it a couple of values. Before that, I just remembered I should actually, let's go ahead and undo that for a second. And let's see that these numbers need to be set before. This is the extrusion starts to ends. I'm saying that from this particular surface, I'm extruding it 12 feet. That's all I'm saying. I just wanted to see that, and I wanted to make sure so it actually draws it properly. So now we can actually go to the array and then say from here to the last, and the last is there, and we're going to set 15, correct? Oh, there we go. 15 is nice. Okay. Now we've got our 15. Great. Without actually getting out of here, I'm actually going to go to the side here, pick another surface, and create my supports. Create. Okay, let's go ahead and pick the spot, that surface, rectangular, extrusion right there. Let's go ahead and say that it's like this, more or less. Okay, and let's go ahead and move this one so it's up against that. Let's go ahead and give it a minus 16 because it's going away from me, with a 1 foot extension beyond the starting point. Okay, let's go ahead and say apply to that, and let's check mark this. And then all we really have to do is just copy it in place. Copy here, here, and here. In order to save a little bit of time, what we're going to do is I'm going to cancel this out, save yes, and I want to show you the one that we have previously completed so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, let's go ahead and show me here and select this one, right click, unhide element. Okay, let's go ahead and close this out. Let's give it a little shadow here, and you can really come and do some really nice items. It's very, very, very fast the way you can actually go ahead and create your additional geometry that is not part of the families or anything like that. Very, very useful. I happen to love this particular one. Let's go ahead and move forward. Beyond the pick a work plane, we have also additional cuttable categories for models. Okay, this is really cool because a lot of the times when we actually have sections through building sections or anything like that, some of our models don't seem to kind of show what we expect. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually improve that a little bit and see what the differences are. Let's go ahead and close this one right now. And let's go ahead and open our next exercise, which is going to be cuttables. Very well. And let's go ahead and open up our level 1 so we can see more or less what we're talking about. Let's go ahead and tile this in views. Tile, ZA zooms all, so we can then zoom this one up a little bit. As you can see where the section that is this one is coming through. Let's go ahead and take a look at this right about there, which is really what I want to show. Now, you'll notice that my section is coming right through this toilet here and through the sink. Also through this chair that is right there. You see that? You will notice that the sink seems to be halfway gone. You see it because of the shadow right there. The shadow of the water spout is right there against the side of the sink. If I actually move my section by just nudging it a little bit, you'll notice what happens to the actual the sink. It actually kind of looks like it's being cut more or cut less. But you'll notice that this particular toilet has a full shadow here on the base, on the slab section. You see it? The same thing with this chair. Okay, realistically speaking, that shouldn't really be it. So what can we actually do? Well, if we select the object, okay, and we say edit family, we have a new category here in properties called enable cutting in views, that once we ignite it and we say load back into project, we override the existing and automatically cuts that particular toilet. Notice that the bottom shadow is gone. So no matter where this section goes, the actual objects that have been cut enabled will actually represent themselves accordingly depending on the position of the particular section that we're looking at. Okay, and just to show that it's not just for fixtures but also for any kind of family, for example furniture, I can go ahead and select this one. Let's go ahead and edit type. Once again, invoke the enable cutting in views and reload it to the particular project and override the existing, and there it is. It cuts, and just like the toilet, oops, I haven't selected it. Let's go ahead and select here, and now I can switch it. Just like the toilet, the actual sections work. Okay, in order to bring it back to the original, you must come back and remove it, reload it, override the existing. Same thing with this one. This is actually this one right here. Let's go ahead and load it into the project and override. And once again, as you can see, you can either have it or not have it. It's up to you. But I find it an extremely good tool that allows us to clarify sections a little bit more. Let's move forward now. Let's close some of these items here. And let's take a look at our next topic. Our next topic is control patterns with family parameters. Now, what happens is that when we create, let's say, for example, and in this case, I'm going to be using a column just for the sake of argument. When we create the column and we have a hatch on the column, that column is for the type. It's always been for the type. But now it's actually, we can actually do it for instance and control it through the actual property. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Very well. Let's go ahead and close this out. Open our next item, which is fill region patterns. It's a very simple little layout. We've got some columns. Let's go ahead and select the column and edit family. And let's go ahead and the family itself, let's move over to the floor plan or ground floor. And let's go ahead and to annotate filled region. And I'm not going to worry about what type of fill this is. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. What I will do now is go ahead and say select, make sure that when I select, it locks on. And I hover and tab twice so I can select it and automatically locks it on. Once I have that done, I'm going to say check mark to finish it and then move over to the properties edit type. In the properties edit type dialog box, I am going to go to the foreground fill pattern. We have our little button there, and I'm going to create yet a new parameter, and I'm going to call this one new. Parameter is going to be column fill, and we'll call this one instance. Let's call it column hatch instead. It's a little bit more specific to what I really want to do. And it's going to be an instance. I'm going to say okay to that all the way out. And now I'm going to reload it into the project. It's going to override the existing, but now they all have the same pattern, right? Previously, if you had to do that and you needed to change one of these, you'd have to go back to the project, rather to the family, and then change it in the family if all of them had to change. And if you had a specific one that was different, then you would have to replace that. But in this case, if I select the specific one that I want to change, you will notice that now you have column hatch here, which is the parameter that we defined. Defining it as the diagonal up, which is what was defined in the actual family. We're going to open that up, just change it over to some nice concrete and say okay. And so now what do you have? It's the same column, but this one's made out of concrete, where these are made out of iron, okay, or whatever the actual material might be. Yet it's still the same family. Very well. Let's move forward. We also have some folding floor lines and split lines. This one is really cool and exciting because it's very, very hard to actually understand what's happening to the slabs when you actually have the pressure points, or rather little drainage points, okay? Or you have some peaks in the actual slab. How do we differentiate between the two types of lines, being the folding lines and the split lines? Notice that the folding lines are going to be red, and I'm sorry, folding lines are going to be blue, and the split lines are going to be red. So let's see how that actually works. Let's close all of this out. And let's open up the proper exercise, which is this one right here. And I've already went ahead and defined it with different line types so you can see it a little bit better. Now remember, the red are the ones that are going to be the split lines, and the folding lines are going to be blue, okay? So I can see that by going to the visibility graphics here, which there are some overrides in the floor category. And as you can see, we've already got them in, okay? Here's the folding lines and here's the split lines. Let's see how that actually comes about. Let's go ahead and say okay. And the first thing I'm going to show you is the way not to do it. Okay, so it is this. I select the item, and you would think that you would want to add a split line, because that's what we're talking about, split or fold lines, correct? When I go ahead and say modify here, okay, well, it's coming out to whatever. Okay, I select it, but look what happens. Even if I go edit sub objects and I select the specific item, the item that I'm looking for to convert this is right here, and it's grayed out, meaning it's not available. So you cannot use this one because it won't let you do that one. Okay, what is the proper way of doing this? Well, let's take a look at it. Oops, I erased the whole thing, sorry. Modify, select, delete. That's how it's supposed to be done. Okay, great. So what I do is go ahead and modify objects and say modify sub-object and add a point. Right before I actually add the point, I like to define my middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and define my middle this way. The middle of this particular model line is going to be the middle of my depression, or rather, it's going to be a peak. So I go ahead and select the slab again. Go ahead and modify, add point. The point is going to be right there. Okay, modify, and then I like to get rid of that. So when I come back, I have nothing interfering. Okay, and then I go ahead and select that one. I'm going to give it a 4-inch height. Automatically, it gives me the lines, right? If I go ahead and say modify, there's my default lines. Now let's go ahead and create them properly. So let's go ahead and modify here. Let's go ahead and modify sub-objects. Let's select, look at that. Because of the way it was created using the node or point, it automatically gives me the lines, and then it allows me to convert them. So with the shift option, or rather control option to add, I select them and I convert them. Now these lines have been converted to the blue lines that were right there. Now, how do we add these red lines? Well, it's really simple. Select the item again, edit, modify sub elements, add a point. Let's go ahead and add a point in the middle here, and here, and there, and there. Let's go ahead and modify, select, modify sub-objects, select this one, give it a value of -1 inch. And I'm going to highlight it. I really hate to type, so I just copy it. And then I start to invoke it in the subsequent points that we just created. Okay. Once that's done, I'm finished. There it is. So now you see how you can actually go ahead and change it to understand it better for peaks and folds, or splits and folds. And you can even do it within the same particular slab that we are trying to further illustrate. Moving forward, we have, last but not least, PDF improvements. Now, in 2022, we had the addition of the PDF export. Notice that I'm saying PDF export, okay? This is, once again, I repeat, this is from 2022. This is the proprietary to AutoCAD, to Autodesk, and specifically Revit, okay? Now, to the addition of the PDF exporter, we have added the edit order or print order. And this is what we're going to be looking at, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at that, how it works. Save changes no here. Okay, we just open up our little favorite little view here. Now you'll notice if you go to print, print allows you to do a PDF. We knew that already, okay? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about exporting our sheets or whatever it is that I want to export to PDF. This is not it. The actual button that you want to use is the one right next to it, right here. This gives you a very similar dialog box, but we're actually more interested in this particular heading right here. If you're interested in seeing how this dialog box actually works, in our 2022 What's New in 2022, we actually look and explore this whole dialog box. But because of time constraints, we're going to just look at this particular piece of improvement. You will see that here, okay, we have a already defined a conceptual set. If I open this up, I'm going to go back into sessions and modify. Now, the session here is showing me that there's nothing selected, and it's only showing me what's been previously selected. I'm going to take that off, and these are all the available headings and views, right? If I actually want to go ahead and see the headings or views that are appropriate to the conceptual, all I have to do is come back to that, and it shows it to me, okay? So let's come back over here to this one, and what happens if I tell it, well, I don't want to see these? Okay, if I actually turn those off, remember they're still selected here in the sheet set only conceptual set. So it doesn't matter if they're not selected here. Once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and say new. Let's call this one renders and say okay to that. And let's go ahead down to, oh, let's kind of a long list, isn't it? So let's go ahead and say, okay, let's search for the REs only. Oh, there they are. Once again, we have the beautiful search engine within the actual dialog box. Select the ones I want. Okay, and let's go ahead and save current set. So now we have two sets. We can switch them. Okay, so this is because we have an RE search. Okay, and we can switch them back and forth. Right, now let's take a look and see what we actually came here to see, which is the drawing order, which is right here. This is this new button in edit print order. Okay, in this one, we have a couple of settings here. For example, we have the browser organization, which is the way it is here in the browser. We also have a sheet numbering, which is the way it should be when you actually plot it and set and crimp it. Okay, and you have your manual order. Let's go ahead and see the browser organization. Oops. And let's see how that works. Let's go ahead and see sheet sort by, when we can sort it by drawn by use issued date, or by sheet prefix, which is basically the numbering. Okay, and we can also say that we want to view the sorts by disciplines, what's not on the sheets, by the faces, and by the type of discipline. Very well. Let's move forward to the sheet numbering. Once again, it goes back to the original because that's the numbering that is set up and it's ascending. And we actually have the manual order, in which case all I have to do is really just move them up and down. Left button hold, and just move it up and down and places it wherever it is that you want it. Okay, and so this is drawing order. Remember, you have your browser organization, which is the way the browser shows it. And then in that case, you have multiple options. Okay, you have your sheet numbering set, and you have your manual. And with that, we have come to the end of our set for PDF formatting. I will now hand it back to Alan for questions and answers. Alan, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple questions here that came in. If anybody does have any additional questions, please do go ahead and send those over now in the questions box. All right, Jim, the first one here. Can you export the PDF print order settings to other projects?
No, I haven't been able to actually see that. And when it says export at the bottom, let's actually see that. When you see this export, it's basically saying here to create the PDFs. It's not talking about exporting the definitions. I'm hoping that eventually they would be able to do that, but I don't see it, because let's remember that each project has its very specific set of rules, so, or naming conventions, or whatever it is that they want. So that might not be necessarily something that they're going to work on, but it would have been nice to be able to export that to another project, yes. But at this point, the answer is no. Yes, go ahead.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Just one more here. Okay, as far as view filter enhancements, when you selected the sill, why did the sills above not highlight as well?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Let me show you that. Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and the answer is rather simple, but it's better to be seen than just talked about. Let's go ahead, and that's in the conditional formatting, I believe. Yes. Okay. Yes, correct. This is where it is. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Sorry, my fault. Go ahead and open up. It's actually not conditional formatting. It's view filters enhancements. Okay. Okay. Now let me show you exactly what that reason is. The question is this: why was it that these actually highlighted and these didn't? Let's go ahead and create that filter again so you can see it real quick. Filters, add, new. Just call it sweeps for the sake of expediency here. Okay, let's go ahead and say that it's going to be the sweeps in the walls. Okay, let's go ahead and say the walls are going to be type name, which is right there. And we're equals to, and we're going to say the wall sill, and apply and okay. And let's go ahead and add it and define it. And we said red and okay. And okay, and okay. And now the question is, why is it that these here turn red, but these didn't? And the answer is, if I actually come in here, this sill right here is actually part of the wall design. Okay, and this sill here was added as an afterthought. So the items that are added via sweeps are the ones that are going to actually highlight. If you actually define it inside the wall style, you'll note that it won't do it. And actually that experiment, I actually did that experiment on purpose, because I'm actually using the same sill 8 here as I do in this particular one. So in the wall style, it's an 8 sill, and so it is here. And the reason I did that is because I needed to make sure that how that worked. Why is it, not why specifically, but make sure that if it's all the same, it's going to actually show appropriately. And eventually I realized that if it's part of the actual wall design, no. But if it's added to the wall later, yes. So it's specifically to the sweep object rather than to the sweeps in general. I hope that answered that question. Anything else?
All right, I think that's it for now. Let's go ahead and jump back to the PowerPoint.
Yes, sir.
And next slide for me. All right, well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, for our What's New in Revit 2023 webinar. Jim did mention that some of these features we're going to be diving into actually in a little bit more depth in upcoming blog posts, and you can find our blog at the link on the screen, ddscat.com/network-center. knowledge-center/Autodesk, and you can find the link for that if you just go to the regular, our regular DDS CAD website as well, and just look for the Knowledge Center. Additionally, if you have any questions, concerns, anything like that, you can reach out to us here at info@ddscad.com, or our phone number here is 305-445-6480. All right, I think that's it for us then. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Alan.
much, everybody. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
watching, and sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, it's just saying thank you to you guys. Thank you for doing this presentation. This was very informative and wonderful. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
bye-bye.
thank you, everyone, for today. See you on the
Have a
next one.
great day, everybody. Be safe and stay healthy.